You're welcome to this special edition of the Economy and Politics Show. It's Boxing Day across the world, and to every Nigerian and everyone across the world there, I believe it's a great time to spend with your family, reflect on the year, and of course, refresh as we prepare ahead of the year 2024. I am Ottoabasi Abasiekong. Of course, here we discuss the economy, policies, and how they impact the households. And today our focus is Nigeria's economic outlook for 2024. What will be the trends that will shape the economy in the new year? We meet to have this conversation in the studio is Dr. Ayo Teriba. He's an economist and CEO of Economic Associates. It's great to have you, Doctor, and compliments of the season.
Thank you very much, Otto. Compliments of the season to you, compliments of the season to everyone. And we look forward to a happy and prosperous year 2024.
That's all what we wish for. And as we reflect on the economy, Doctor, let's begin with the foreign exchange management in Nigeria. As you know, foreign exchange stability is very crucial to a country like Nigeria, and we've seen various steps taken. In June this year, when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came on board, the central bank announced measures which some have called unification to some liberalization of the foreign exchange market. And we've seen how the naira to dollar has spiraled to over 1,000 and really having effects on businesses and various sectors of the economy. But one major issue that's being discussed is the policy steps by fiscal and monetary policy authorities. We heard the president at the 2023 Nigeria Economic Summit, Group Summit discuss about foreign exchange guidelines that will come out, a framework, which the central bank governors also talked about, that they want to work out guidelines and framework that is inclusive to the economy, and also the foreign exchange backlogs, which remain a major issue. We even want to know how much is the backlog and what has been cleared. But for you, Doctor, from your assessment as an economist who has really served in various governments and is well respected in the country, what are the key issues that need to be addressed in this regard that will restore confidence and attract foreign direct investments, which is very key to having liquidity?
Right. It is true that the part of the Nigerian sky where the clouds are thickest is currently and looming large for 2024 is the foreign exchange market. Yes, we commend the unification of the exchange rate of the naira, because there's no point creating multiple markets. It has benefited the government that the narrowing of the gap between the official and the private market means that the leakage of government revenue through exchange rate subsidy has ended. And we're beginning to see the impact on government revenue.
And that's what you've advocated over time, Doctor, blocking those leakages.
Yeah, it was a consensus in the build-up to the election. Every candidate, pledged to block it, and I'm happy that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu lived up to his words and has blocked that foreign exchange leakage. Since we unified, we can count the gains in revenue, but there is a huge cost, that still need to be addressed. The increased volatility of the exchange rate, especially in the official market. It has become very volatile. It could be 1,000 to $1 today, and jump back to 800 to $1, and then jump back to 1,050 to $1. That level of volatility is a deterrent to business decisions. When you can't see the cloud clearly, then you probably will not take off. Flights are not going to take off. So you're likely to delay investment outlays. And the volatility of the exchange rate spills over. It passes through into domestic consumer prices. And we've seen inflation at 28%, approaching 30%.
Mm-hmm. And food inflation is over 31%, 32%.
Is it?
Food inflation is also such, yeah.
So such volatility in exchange rates, aggravates the inflationary situation, perpetuates food and energy price shocks that erode both consumer living standards and business profitability. So it's no surprise that some businesses that had been operating in Nigeria for quite a while are taking the decision to exit. So key question for the outlook in 2024 is how soon can we put an end to that volatility of the exchange rate?
Which is very important for sustainability of businesses.
Yeah, people express concerns about growth. You won't have growth with that kind of volatility. And you won't have inflation come down with that volatility. So for you to be in a position to start seriously talking about growth, you need to calm that foreign exchange market. And there are no shortcuts here. You've mentioned backlogs in the country's commitment. You said CBN, but CBN is acting, as an agent of the government, commitment to banks on forward forex contracts, which have fallen due, but the central bank or government of Nigeria has been unable to do the needful to meet their commitments. Such backlogs represent significant supply shortfalls that underpins the volatility. So there's no conversation about stabilizing the exchange rate. That doesn't sit on the head of that. How soon can the Nigerian government find foreign exchange liquidity to stabilize the market? And it also seems, from the actual budget performance in MTF and in the proposed budget, that we might be in arrears of interest payment obligations on foreign debt. We've paid about twice what we plan to pay on ways and means. We've been on target on what we plan to pay on domestic debt. But seems that we are in arrears. It is a significant percentage of what's due on what was budgeted on foreign debt, on external debt, is unpaid. So it's not just backlogs in obligations to domestic banks, but there are backlogs, on obligations to external creditors as well. And all of that will make it difficult for our sovereign issuer risk rating to be upgraded. We've been downgraded to a few notches above the default zone. And so we need to find answers. We should have found these answers before we unified the exchange rate.
So that we should have taken that step first before
we should have, taken desperate measures to get reserves. Yeah. And we didn't at the time, and that's cost us all the volatility we've seen, cost us the deterioration in inflation that we've seen, and must have accounted for, growth turning out less than had been anticipated. So can we now do something about it? We have seen flashes, of investors being eager to invest in Nigeria. I mean, what
across
do you make
various
of
countries,
more than 14 billion in pledges
from India.
And similar pledges. We are not sure what the amounts are. Yeah, from Germany, from UAE, from Saudi Arabia. Question: when will those monies
That's the big question.
Arrive?
Yes.
Then we do not have to wait for individual investors in individual countries to be making pledges to us. We now know that investors are keen on Nigeria. Why do we not look at the assets that offer the best investment opportunities, for foreign investors, since we are looking for forex liquidity, and put them together in a short list? Are we talking 2? Are we talking 10? Are we talking 20? Which is how countries that do get foreign direct investment engage with foreign direct investors. It starts with the fundable projects. Where the carcass are, there the vulture would gather. So bring forth the carcass. So instead of, chasing butterflies, which is like when you want to travel to their country, create a garden and butterflies will chase you. We come to your garden. Are we together? So that's the critical conversation. We've had, for decades, the privatization program. More recently, we are talking about MOFI.
Which I'm going to come to that.
MOFI is said to have captured some assets worth 18 trillion naira in February this year, which the then president charged them to enhance the value to 100 trillion. What are those assets? And so when we will begin to attract investors' interest into them, do we need to wait from February 1 to December before we will announce that the first deal has been originated or that the first deal has been consummated? So we need to get into the deal-making mode. Because unless the deals come on the table, the investment will not arrive. Whether you're talking of domestic direct investment or foreign direct investment.
Okay, let me just come in there. Now, I know that you're also a strong advocate of us unlocking value from our assets and our enterprises. You've been on this, and of course, you also served in the Ministry of Finance Incorporated Governing Council. You served there. So, recently, Dr. Armstrong Takang, the managing director of the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, at an event I attended, talked about the fact that we need a national asset register. It's being worked on. And he said that we can, like President Buhari had charged them, unlock value to about 100 trillion naira, which will have impact on the market, which you've also advocated. But the big question is the National Asset Register a priority, or the deal room, which you discuss in the sessions you have on the Nigerian Economic Outlook, powered by the EA? Is it the deal room? You've referenced India, you've referenced Brazil, where deals are consummated on state enterprise and assets. What should be the priority as we go into the new year?
Right. So, out of the National Asset Register or the deal room, which one should come first? Is your question. Quite obviously, the logical answer is that the deal room should come first. The deal room should have been created in the first month of MOFI's existence, because that is where the rubber hits the tarmac. You can neither take off nor land without the rubber hitting the tarmac. So MOFI's arrival should have been marked by the creation and announcement of a deal room. Asset register, as important as it may be, doesn't provide you any immediate answer to the problem at hand.
To addressing the illiquidity
That's right.
issues. Yeah.
You need to do deals to unlock liquidity. And asset register could be academic, because if you do create an asset register, maybe only a small fraction of the assets on the register could be financial assets. The bulk of the assets will be non-financial. And it is through the deal making that you financialize non-financial assets. Asset register you can always do, but survive, you can't delay survival. So let's have the deal room. Did Saudi Arabia create a national asset register before they financialized Aramco? No, they did not. So you're going to look for immediate assets that has a potential market value, but which we don't know the market value. So look at the list of the 18 trillion assets in Murphy's books. Some of them will be kept there at historical value or at book value. Bring some of them to the deal room to establish their market value. That's a deal. Taking Aramco to the market and establishing that it is now worth 1.7 trillion in 2019 is a deal. And subsequently raising sukuk against it at home and abroad are deals. You don't have to go and do census. Yeah. Are we together? Sure. So we are saying create a delivery room and count the bats, live bats that are happening in the delivery room. Yeah. You don't need to do census to register new bat. Or to register, people who are old and who are exiting. So you can do, when last did we do a census? But we register back every day. We register that every day. So don't confuse. The two are in the Murphy Charter. Yeah. The president asked that a deal room or a project actually be created. What the president didn't say at inauguration is to put a date to when it should be created. There's nothing delaying anybody from starting the deal room.
So that's a priority for this government.
Letting MDAs or even states or even private, who have proposals, for funding national assets to originate deals. And it is that deal room that all key government agencies involved in the deal-making value chain must be there. So it's a one-stop shop for de-risking projects, for facilitating investment, for accelerating investment, typically chaired by the head of state. And it is that deal room that investors will also come in at the buy end. So MDAs come in at the sell end. Say this idle land has a potential, for this, for that. And all the MDAs are there as a clearing. It's also a clearing house. Yes. Say that, okay, there are no conflicting claims. If there are conflicts, they resolve them. And if valuation needs to be done, it's done on that deal platform. And valuation deals are countable deals. Yeah. Because it unlocks wealth for the country. You don't know the value of NNPC. Put NNPC in that deal room. Let's establish the market value. You have property, real estate, you don't know the value. Put it on that deal. Once the value is established, it begins to give us a base of financialized assets that our debts can be referenced to. Just establishing market valuation can take Murphy assets from that 18 trillion in excess of the 100 trillion. Yeah. So why delay it? What are we waiting for? When our debt keeps, spiraling and
that's an action
gets
point,
looking
definitely
desperate.
Yeah.
So both are worth doing, but one is more urgent than the other. the deal room is, if you have a national asset register but you don't have a deal room, it's to no avail. So you have the register in vain. So deal room is urgent. And if that could be part of the policy announcements as the budget 2024 is read, it will be great.
Doctor, I want to talk about the 2024 budgets. We've seen assumptions and all that, but revenue projection is very important. Do you think that the government can also, I know Murphy, the assets were not signaled into the budget, which would have been a projection of these kind of revenues we'll get from our state assets and enterprises. What can be done to remedy that? Because we really need revenue to address the issue of deficit financing and even the capital expenditure.
Okay. Well, the unfolding reality is as follows. The Tinubu regime met a situation in which government revenue had been dwindling, has been declining, and the revenue declarations in the budget were never attained in the last 7 years. You wake up in the beginning of the year and you say you are going to get 9 trillion or 10 trillion. But the peak that the Buhari government got was 7 trillion as of 2022. And they started with 4 trillion in 2015. They met a 4 trillion budget in 2015, revenue in 2015, and in
space of almost 7 years.
2017, it was 4 trillion. It stayed more or less stagnant at 4 trillion till 2020, which was the year where we paid a little more, in debt service than the revenue. So revenue had been stagnant. And it was stagnant until they had planned to raise about 10 trillion in revenue for this year. And it was clear to all of us when they made the announcement in last year that they won't make it. And of course, they didn't make it. Up to July, they didn't make it. If you looked at realized revenue in July, that's after 7 months, they had made 5 trillion. It took the impact of the unification of the foreign exchange market done by President Tinubu to put an end to that. So they had a shortfall of 20% from projected prorated revenue up to September. But up to July. But by September, as the revenue leakage blocking that the president succeeded, we met the prorated projection up to September and exceeded it by 4%. That was good. So we got 5 trillion in 7 months to July. By September, it has jumped to 8.6 trillion. So if we got about 3.6 trillion in 2 months compared to 5 trillion in 7 months, you see that a regime change has occurred. And so it's in the light of that regime change that the 2024 budget projection of 18 trillion in 2024 is credible, is achievable. And it's successfully we will be breaking through 10 trillion barrier for the first time. We're aiming at 18 trillion. Some say it could even be better. But a big note of warning is that if you look at the dollar value of 4 trillion in 2015, when the exchange rate was 160, and the dollar value of 18 trillion in 2024, when the dollar is 800, 1,000. So 4 trillion in 2015 is more than 18 trillion in 2024. 4 trillion in 2016 was divided by 160, was $25 billion. And 18 trillion in 2024, if you divide by 1,000, is $18 billion. If you say, okay, no, it's not 1,000, it's 800, or it's 800 and whatever, it's going to be 20 billion. Yeah. Okay? So we need to do more. Okay? It's better than not achieving 10 trillion. Okay? So we seem now to have enough to cover recurrent
expenditure,
including debt service. But the major problem with the budget this year is that the key shortfall is in capital spending. They planned, 6 trillion for the year, but as of September, they had only achieved 25%. And it's not likely that that's going to change before the end of the year, which is what makes the conversation about turning to your assets and the liquidity that you can unlock from it. That's what it makes it make sense, and it makes it urgent. That unless we actually do this now, you can't afford the luxury of saying our revenue projection doesn't include MOFI. Okay, if the revenue projection doesn't include return on MOFI assets, then the financing discussion, it should be front and center of the financing decision. That we don't want to borrow debt. There are two liabilities you can incur. You can incur debt liabilities, or you can incur equity liabilities. And the key difference between the two is that to incur equity liabilities, you have to put assets on the table. And say, oh, this company, I'm going to sell 5% of it. Oh, this real estate, I'm going to give a concession to rebuild. For example, National Stadium is there, and in zero. So if you award that to a foreign investor, I don't think that location is fit for National Stadium anymore. If you create, some better location that is not encroached upon by the city, and you turn this to maybe offices or luxury homes or shopping or recreation, something of value that will generate, returns commensurate with its market value. You can do the same with the Federal Secretariat. So you're talking about specific assets that can attract immediate investment and that could eventually earn the country lease revenue. That conversation was missing from the proposed budget, and we need to put it there.
We need to put it there. It's very important. And as we ramp up, Doctor, 2024, the whole opportunities are there in equity financing and leveraging our assets and enterprises to unlock value and liquidity. But let's look at the opportunities in 2024. You've talked about the knowledge-based economy. How can Nigeria be competitive? And in addition, what are those sectors or areas that we should look out for that will shape the economy in 2024?
Well, the conversation about the impact of new technologies on industrialization up to 1990, industrialization was about physical technology, about the wheel, about engines, whether it's rail transport or sea transport or air transport or road transport. The factories was about physical technology, and mechanization of economic activities, whether it's farm or factory or even shops. But post-1990, with the advent of the internet and with the growth of the dot-com firms, with the digital revolution, many activities that used to be material have been dematerialized and has beaten into industry. such that some activities have migrated from place to space. They have, transmuted from products to services. And that has, led to deindustrialization. Global industrial growth has peaked and most likely will decline. And there is nothing that can reverse that. Because of digital revolution. So rather than products, you'll be looking at digital services. It's not just digital revolution. There's also biotechnological revolution that is contributing to the deindustrialization. Most crops and livestock now have genetically modified alternatives. And you can ask questions about the degree of genetic modification, but in some cases, it's actually possible to bypass the traditional process. For example, you can see genetic modification that leads to increased yield in livestock or in crops, but you can see genetic modification that cuts off, that is just, meat from the lab or food, from the lab. That rivals, are we together? Yeah. The organic. So it bypasses the organic process altogether. Just a small cell, and then they go into the lab and they can deliver you tons, as many tons as you want. That also has led to deindustrialization. That's service. And the third industrial revolution, tech revolution that is halting industrialization is the ecological technology, in which a product that has been central to human existence, like oil, like fossil fuels,
which is our major
is being challenged successfully, being dethroned successfully, not even by the shale, which is biotechnology,
shale, yes,
but by solar energy,
renewables,
which the same old sun, will displace fossil fuel. Are we together?
Yes.
It's inexhaustible. It's renewable.
And it's clean energy.
And so all the tons, millions of barrels of oil that needed to be shipped at the peak of the industrial age eventually may not be shipped. So you have seen, a peaking of world exports and stagnation, and it will eventually decline. Yes, and it's irredeemable. All the activities that have been digitized will never be on board, will never be shipped anywhere. So when you render services, all the services that have been rendered on Facebook now, do they count as import or as export? Not many of them lend themselves to easy classification as, even, when you bought software in the past, it was a product you bought, floppy disk and so on. Don't buy software anymore. So exports, industry-led ecosystem has ended. So we are in the post-industrial phase. We're in the post-export industry phase, post-manufacturing phase, in which services and the knowledge that creates the revolutions, the technological revolution, the patents that backs the digitization, the trademarks, the patents that backs the biotech, the patents that back the ecological technology transmission. And they are feeding back even into the physical technology, So we're in that age where your ability to contribute to new inventions, new technological inventions. So we are moving away from a production-dominated world to an innovation-dominated world. And if you look at the most prosperous companies today, and you ask the question, are they producers or are they innovators? They're more likely to answer as innovators. Because many of them don't even produce their own products. Apple has no factory. They call Apple a factoryless manufacturer. It contracts other people to produce, but it has a stronghold on its innovation. Assets creation, digital asset creation, physical asset creation. And it has a stronghold on its market. So it doesn't matter who produces Apple products. For Apple, you can't even get to buy Apple software or to work on a counterfeit. Are we together? So they market their product, they service their products. Their products are basically devices that help you to access services. Are we together? So how does Nigeria play in that system? Invest in your human capital. So invest first in your human capital. And then you will join the global knowledge service ecosystem. There's no tech company now that does not have an Indian in the leadership. And I told them that, look, if you go to Europe, US, they have the best universities, they always have. But if you look at the top universities, you find more Indians and Chinese in graduate programs and on the faculty than the nationals. And those countries, China and India, had sponsored their nationals straight from the government's purse. So Nigeria should follow suit. Do not hesitate. Philippines trains not just doctors, nurses, sailors. They also develop domestic workers and help them. So do not save money when it comes to investing on your human capital. It makes you better off. It makes you take better decisions as a nation, and it makes you richer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayo Teriba. I mean, you've given us clear action points. We must take seriously the signaling on unlocking value from our state assets and enterprises, particularly, like you rightly said, emphasizing the deal room for the Ministry of Finance Incorporated. So we'll be watching the Minister of Finance, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, and the President to see the next steps that have to happen. And of course, investing in human capital, very critical. Maybe we look again at education subsidies, but of course, the long term, it creates value. If you've seen what has happened with India and China, and it's really, really nice to have you, to have this conversation. And we're looking forward to 2024 and the possibilities. But yes, Nigeria has the potential to unlock value, get liquidity, address its foreign exchange challenges. And of course, like you said, once liquidity is addressed, growth and stability aligns. Thank you once again, Dr.
Thank you very
for the
much.
insights for the year 2024 as it
Thank you.
concerns Nigeria. To all our viewers, that will be all for this edition, special edition of the Economy and Politics Show on the Boxing Day for the year 2023, where we discussed Nigeria's economic outlook for 2024. Fresh, insightful ideas from Dr. Ayo Teriba, economist and CEO of Economic Associates, on how we can navigate in the year 2024 from the policy side and what should be priority for us to invest in. The need for us to unlock liquidity from our state assets and enterprises, and the need for us to invest in human capital. Very key things that we can take away from and expand the conversation. You can join our website, www.proshare.co, to watch this video and, of course, gain insights on the conversations around the economy and our outlook for the year 2024. Also, follow our social media platforms displayed on the screen. Thank you for being part of this show. This is wishing you once again a very, very prosperous 2024 ahead. My name is Ottoabasi Abasiekong. Bye for now.